Hello, hello. What is up, everybody on YouTube? How are you today on this fine, lovely day, wherever it finds you? I'm here today doing more live streaming, and today is an artistic development session with two of the new participants in my Producer's Path course. We've got Harold Wu, who I'm really excited to learn about, and then we have one of my favorite people in the world, Todd D. Cameron, who was my favorite DJ when I was in high school, and also one of my very good friends, and he's here joining us as well. So we're all over on Zoom. So I'm going to switch over to Zoom now. There we go. Hey, what up, everybody? How's it going?
Good. How are you, man?
I'm doing good, feeling good. How are you, Harold?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right, man. Yeah, I was just working on a sesh with Mr. Bill today while I was putting together the lecture slides, and I was like, oh, I can kind of do both of these things at once. This is cool because there's a lot of stuff where you're putting together lecture slides. It's like, it takes your full attention, but like not quite, and like collabing with Bill's driving, and it's over Discord. So I'm like, oh, this is a good flow. So I'm pretty stoked about that because that's, some good multitasking. I've been streaming a lot more in Discord. So I think these, we're probably moving over to Discord soon. But as a result of the moving over to Discord soon for these artist development sessions, as a result of that, we don't have a paid Zoom account anymore. So yeah, be ready for me to send you a link again. But I'll send it again. Okay, so I guess starting with you, Harold, did you watch any of the other videos about this
I
artistic
have.
development stuff? Okay, cool. How about you, Todd? Did you watch any of the other ones?
But if they've helped me, I can't say that they've helped me come up with a good answer for your question. So,
Okay, cool. Well, okay, so I'll just
no, they are very good for sure. I just you'll understand when you ask me, and we'll talk
okay,
about it.
cool. Well, let's cut right to the chase then. What is your brand? What is your favorite color? And what is the land speed of an unladen swallow?
Well, I mean, the thing is, I don't know how we haven't hung out in a long time, so I don't remember how genre bending I was back then. But I mean, I would be the definition of a jack of all trades, but maybe master of none. But one won't say master of none. So when it comes to what I want to make, I make a lot of drum and bass. That's what I've always made. I've stopped and started, because of backups that I didn't have. That's a discussion that we
Yes, I remember the great data loss of the Star Wars song.
Yeah, right.
A party on Endor.
I have a copy that I've ripped from the dub plate that I've cleaned up. That sounds as good as it possibly did when I wrote it 20 years ago or whatever it was. So when it comes to what kind of drum and bass do I do if I was to walk in and say Chase and Status walked in, and the only I would have to say genre bending drum and bass for the ADHD mind.
Okay, I mean that's pretty clear. That's pretty clear.
Cool. I'm glad that's but that's the thing is, you talk about that focus, you really delve deep into to be really specific, and it's that is really difficult for me who just kind of loves it all. And
I mean, loving it all and making it all are two different things. And I think that you're going to have to realistically accept that you're not capable of making the entire spectrum of music that you enjoy, nor is anyone ever.
That is
right?
Absolutely true.
So, it's not like you're insulting the music that you're not making by not making it or anything. You don't your responsibility is to make the best music you can make. And what makes music hit hard is when it's presented in a way that audiences can digest and that they can take in, and with enough attention to the way things are presented and branded in terms of the presentation, the branding almost becomes invisible. And that's why, people don't that's why so many people have trouble thinking about branding, is that they're thinking about it in terms of a gimmick or a shtick or like, a put on or something that's inauthentic, right? Whereas you know, like when you think of like Usain Bolt, the brand, like he's Usain Bolt is a very specific fucking brand, but you wouldn't think about it as like he doesn't have a Usain Bolt logo, necessarily, and he's doing something that everybody does, running,
Right.
But within running, he has a certain style and a certain vibe and a certain personality that beyond just being the fastest, he's like, he has like an attitude and like there's a like he's not you're not going to confuse Usain Bolt with like I don't know, like who are the other? I don't remember anyone else. He so dominates so hard. I don't remember any other famous runners. But my point is, you're not confusing Usain Bolt with anybody. Fuck, there goes my metaphor. But he does have a brand within that, and like genre bending ADD drum and bass is a pretty succinct description, I think, and really like. I mean, even just using ADD as a positive descriptor, there
Yeah.
are certain groups of people that would use ADD as a positive descriptor, and then there are groups that would not, right? But I think like for you, in terms of your brand, it's more like within that when you're thinking about what you're releasing as opposed to as a DJ. Because like, for example, like you go see Amon Tobin DJ is very different than seeing an Amon Tobin show, like a live set,
Right.
and like when he DJs, he like will play, like I remember him playing like New School Breaks records and stuff, like shit that was, you're like, oh, Amon Tobin is into this, I wouldn't have thought, but in a live context. Or like Toki Monster, like I've seen Toki Monster play like a happy hardcore track in her set before, and it's like you don't really think of, she does like fucking like vibey like brain feeder stuff in house, and then she'll like fucking play some like crazy drum and bass track or something, like just as a curveball in a set. But she's not gonna be like, hey guys, I'm making a happy hardcore album now, like here we go, rebrand, like she's not gonna do that. It's different, right?
I could see my drum and bass show being very different than like my DJing, especially like when like I'm one of the only people I know who welcomes requests of any style that you can imagine, as long as you're willing to have it played with whatever I'm focused on at the time, which is usually like for DJing is usually like a tech house or like a techno house, like that kind of BPM style. Like I welcome requests, and it keeps me on point for DJing. But like if I was to play if I was to be doing like a live PA or something with drum and bass, like that ain't gonna be happening.
So think about it like, you got to kind of take off your DJ hat a bit here, because we're talking about as a producer, and when you're operating as a producer and creating styles as a producer, you can do like an album, you can do like a concept album or like a concept style for a while, and then move on to another style and stuff, and still have a brand that exists that's like larger than those two styles. But usually, when you think of a producer's style, it's like there's a kind of specific, the more specific they are about the aesthetic of their production, what ingredients do they use? What do they value when they're mixing? What is forwards? Because even like, if you think of like a reggae mix of like a song by a reggae band and then the dub mix of it, they might be the exact same fucking stems. But what the dub remixer has chosen to focus on is like, taking the leads and stuff out and making space in the mix so that the beats and the bass can come up, and like having all these extra spacey delays and stuff that changes the mood and the feeling of that piece of music to make it more like abstract and drugged out and dance floor oriented, etc. Right? So you could be this could be the same stems and still have like a different kind of brand or concept in that aesthetic, right? So when you're thinking about this stuff, like as a live DJ brand, your answer like, oh yeah, ADD, drum and bass music, multi-genre bending ADD drum and bass music works great as a DJ. Like, awesome. But this is not the DJ's path, is it?
Yeah,
Right?
that's right.
So I want you to think back about that. Think about that a bit more. And rather than think like what goes in the me bucket and what goes in the not me bucket,
Mm-hmm.
think about what's on the top of the list versus what's somewhere else on the list.
Okay.
Right? So, and what should be, so like what's at the top of your list style wise? You want to be thinking like, is there a nostalgia fader? Like, how nostalgic is it on the nostalgia fader? Is there a party energy fader? Where is it on the party energy fader? Is there a fucking depth fader? Where is it on the depth fader? Etc. Right? So I want you to go write down, like on a piece of paper while I'm talking to Harold, I want you to write down the different dimensions in which you would measure the different styles of music. And just think about it as you've got a bunch of fucking faders on a mixer. And you're coming up with like, what is my concept style for this next body of work? Right? Okay. Don't think about it necessarily as forever, because I think your forever brand is what it always has been, and that's fine. But now you're extending from that to carve out a niche as a producer, right? And to carve out a niche as a producer, you want to be able to provide a pretty specific take on electronic music that when people like one track and then they see another track come out from you, they're like, oh, I liked that last one. Let's see what he's got next. And it's going to please those same fans in the same way, but be a different track, right? So this is not forever, but just think like what, if I had to pick a setting that was my top of the list setting on each of these imaginary faders, what would those settings be? So, there's definitely like, how hectic and busy is the music, how spare and minimal is the music. Like have a fader of that, have a fader of, how organic are the sound design components? Is it using a lot of samples? Is it using a lot of synths? How perfect or imperfect is this music? How dirty or clean is this music? How on the grid or off the grid is this music? How in tune or out of tune is this music? How hipstery or mainstream is this music, etc. Right? So like write those fucking dimensions down, and then when we come back, I want you to tell me what those settings are. Okay?
I like it. I like that one.
All right.
Your other one, so I'm really intrigued. You seem to know me well.
Yeah, I'm trying to put it in Todd terms. I know you, dude. We've hung out enough times. Okay, okay. So Harold, so you saw the other ones, and I'm not going to make you do the exact same thing or phrase it in the same way, because that would, there comes a point. But I do, need you to clearly explain to me what it is that your brand and style and project are about.
So I've like Todd, I've watched the videos, but I didn't really have like a really great answer to give you right off the bat. I think my brand, I am also like consider myself a jack of all trades, but I'm really into like nature and like, I don't know if you know about like sacred geometry.
Yeah, I mean it's everywhere, like the Fibonacci numbers and all that. Yeah, you learn all about that.
I'm really into board sports. So I
Sweet.
I want to make music that kind of like reminds me of like Odessa, like in those GoPro commercials, like inspiring music that you can sort of like get into a flow state with.
Okay.
Like it's almost like at the end of your session, whatever, if you're driving or if you're doing extreme sports, or even if you're like playing video games or something, like at the end, you don't necessarily like remember all the parts of the music because like you were so in your other activity that it was just kind of like became part of your experience, if that makes sense.
So you
Uh,
so you want to make music as a soundtrack to the awesomest
yeah,
moments.
yeah, something like
When
that.
you're at your awesomest, that's what you put
Yeah,
on.
or like to inspire you to do things too. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, if someone told me that their music was the soundtrack to my awesomeness, I would be like, I want to listen to that. Like, that's pretty, the music that you put on when you want to do something awesome. Like, I think that's, or if you phrase, because I mean, that's pretty much what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I kind of that's where I'm trying to get at. Yeah. I think you phrased it better. I was kind of
Okay.
like in my mind thinking and then just talking it out right now. So,
Yeah. So that's, okay. So, I mean, like, I have a pretty clear picture. I mean, the I think I remember the Odessa GoPro ad, which really helped.
uh
And you don't want to have that in your artist bio or something, like that's like not
yeah.
unless GoPro are going to cut you a check. But yeah. So why don't you talk a little bit more about what other artists that you are inspired by?
Um, I think I'm kind of like all over the place, but in terms of like EDM, I really like Grizz, and then I like a lot of sad boy artists too, and Odessa, obviously, Closey, some of the bassy like Rez. I like a lot of that like bassy, trappy kind of stuff too.
Okay, cool. Do you play the guitar? I see there's a guitar in the
Yeah, I
background.
play guitar. I'm not like great.
Yeah, you don't have to be any good to make samples. It's pretty awesome. Like I'm
I'm
terrible
not
at
a
guitar. I still
soloist,
do.
but I can, yeah, all the chords and
Okay,
progression.
cool. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so I mean, one of the things that kind of stands out to me about all of the artists that you mentioned
Hmm.
is that they do like pretty heavy duty sound design on like melodic sounds, you know,
Hmm.
like because like there's sound design people like like Noisia or like EPROM or whatever where they're like sound designy as fuck but like not with the melodies necessarily, right? Whereas
Yeah.
Closey, for example, will like experiment with a lot of different interesting live instruments and actually like, she'll use a recording studio like for recording, and not just like put her mixer on the fucking put her laptop on the desk and produce in a recording studio. She'll actually use the gear.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then like I mean, Rez definitely has like her take on sound design is pretty specific too. Um, but yeah, and then like Odessa have like a pretty kind of like a lot. There's some commonalities in the percussion of all those artists except for Rez. Um, okay, cool. And then like, how about like beat structure and BPM? Do you have strong feelings about any of those things?
No, not really. Maybe something not as mellow as like Kygo, a little bit more.
Okay.
But I do like Pretty Lights, and they have like a lot of like sort of slower BPMs, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, it's like an act like Pretty Lights or Flume can feel like a main stage act, even if they play chill out music the whole set.
Hmm.
Like it's like presenting things in kind of a grandiose sort of a way where it like you know it feels like all those artists, it, they're not as much like drop artists as they are like kind of build up artists, you know?
Yeah.
And like I remember hearing like this quote from him. I was playing a gig and Flux Pavilion had played the day before, and I was talking to the sound guy, he's like, "Oh yeah, Flux Pavilion was here the day before. He was really cool." I was like, "Oh yeah, you guys hang out?" And he was like, "Yeah." He said something really cool to me. He said, you know, uh, anybody can pop the balloon, but not just anybody can blow it up. And that really stuck with me. And I was like, dude, that's a pretty fucking good line there, Flex Pavilion.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good line. But yeah, I would say all of those artists are expert balloon blowers. So, you know, I think like, you know, yeah, definitely like melodic would probably be a word to include when describing your brand. There's definitely like
Okay.
a kind of, you know, I mean, Rez may not be like known for her melodies, but she has pretty memorable melodies as well. You know, and it's definitely like, yeah. So, okay. So, I mean, I guess like, I'm hesitant to use genre words because a lot of the time people like will rename a genre every 10 years. You
Yeah.
know, I'm surprised
Yeah.
drum and bass hasn't got a new American name yet. You know it's coming. You know it's coming. They're gonna be like, oh, this is super rhythm or some stupid shit. Uh, but you know it's coming. But yeah, so but you know, like that kind of like future like pop EDM, electronica, kind of whatever the fuck you want to call it is kind of like it is a thing.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, how do you feel? Okay, like a lot of the artists that you mentioned have like you know, pretty signature percussion too. You know,
Okay.
like I mean, Closey definitely has a way of doing drums, especially recording her own like organic drums and stuff. But yeah, I think like because I mean the only like Rez is definitely not. She doesn't always use organic sounds. You know, she has some pretty like synthesizery, like futuristic fucking the machines are taking over kind of vibes. So I don't know how do you feel about that axis of the organic to inorganic?
Um, I like the mix of both. So maybe for like the basses and stuff, like I like the synth sounds and stuff like that. But then I also like the live guitar elements. Sometimes like that artists will come out with like the electric and they'll just bust a solo or something like that. So I
Yeah.
like playing with the mixture of things. I think that's
Okay. Um. Yeah, because I mean, how do you feel about the word pop?
I like pop.
Okay. Because I mean, all of those artists are very popular electronic music
Yeah.
artists, and you know when like melodic and pop are in a description of a brand, they are definitely apt. You know, and a lot of those artists I would say are you know strong in the melodic component and are good as like popular music artists. Um, and okay, and then in terms of like what makes it your music as opposed to uh the next artist in that genre, because like you remember the talk of the book Positioning, right? That and some of the other like I mentioned this book and all of these other discussions about artist development, but I'll do a quick recap I guess for YouTube viewers who maybe didn't see the other ones. But basically in within a brand is not just like your logo or your you know choice of artwork with your record. You know your brand is really anything about you and your project that a music fan would use to distinguish it from the next person and the next person's project. So it's that set of characteristics that are uniquely combined in you and that would be used to identify you versus someone else by a fan, you know? So your brand is not necessarily what you're putting out, but it's what they're picking up. You know, so like for example, I'm sure Vanilla Ice's brand in his head is perhaps a little bit different than it is in your head, right? So, you know, it's important to consider that it's basically like it exists in a much more real way in the minds of the public than it does in your mind, right? So in every category, there is basically a hierarchy or a ladder of status level within any given category, right? And the ideal world for you, the ideal positioning as a brand would be when you can become the Kleenex of tissues, or the Walkman of portable cassette players, or the Uber of ride-sharing services, right? When your brand is synonymous with the category and it gets an unassailable position, such as Q*bert's enjoys in turntablism. Even now, decades after Q*bert competed in his last DMC, when you talk to the average person who's not necessarily a turntablist fan, they'll know Q*bert, but they might not know some of these more recent champions who are doing very different and very advanced things with the art form, things that Q*bert probably knows very little about. But Q*bert is, considered to be, like he's not like he's not like a big Serato guy, and he doesn't, he doesn't do like NPC battles and shit like at the Goldie Awards and stuff. Like turntablism now is very different. Q*bert, like I've hung out with him. He's into turntables and hardware samplers. That's what he likes. That's his shit. So he's not necessarily like geeking out on fucking 8 turntable mixing with video in Serato, Like C2C. Have you seen C2C? They're fucking bonkers. Bonkers. You like group turntable shit? Yeah. It's just not, that's not what Q*bert does. He does something else. But his halo effect extends that far that in the minds of the public, he's of course number one in anything to do with turntablism. So that's really the ideal, is to get to that sort of a position. Now, getting everybody else out of the way in a ladder of hierarchy, such as melodic electronic pop music, can be quite challenging. There are many, many other artists in that specific niche or créneau, right? So what a lot of artists will do is they will come up with a style that is distinct and fresh, that is defined as much by what it does not do as what it does. When you think of like punk rock, for example, punk rock is defined as much by what they don't give a fuck about as what they focus on, right? So, figuring out like where your values lie and where they can differ from the rest of the people in that niche or créneau, whatever you want to call it. It's more technically a créneau, but I'm going to keep calling it a niche, is figuring out like how your project is going to be different from that, et cetera. And a lot of the artists who do the best, especially in today's landscape, they focus on like the purple cow strategy, where they're basically like, you drive by a field with cows, who cares? You don't have a cow related problem, you keep driving. But then there's a purple cow, you get out, you take a selfie, post it online, it goes viral. Everybody's talking about the purple cow on Reddit. Did the purple cow spend any money on marketing? No, it's a purple cow, right? So Seth Godin has this TED Talk about this called The Purple Cow, and that's where that purple cow metaphor that you always hear me use is from. But, a lot of the artists who've done the best recently in our modern era are people who are just like, they're doing something that's inherently conversation worthy, and when you are first to doing something different, that's when you can, own a position on one of these hierarchies, right? So it is possible to go after a crowded landscape and turn it on its head, as Camo and Crooked did 30 years into drum and bass. Like that Mosaic album made everybody else go, the fuck are we even doing? And it was 30 years into one of the most active genres in electronic music. So it is still always possible to be that shocker that turns everything on its head. But, you know, to define a style that is going to have that effect, you have to basically do it intentionally, create it like a style manifesto of rules that you are specifically going to follow that are your own, you know, uproot the rules that you unconsciously follow that are not your own, and put in place rules that you consciously follow that are your own, right? Okay, so let's stop this meeting and then come back at the same link. I think that will work. I think you can just come hit the same link again, but let's stop this and come back at the same link, and then I'll go open it up for YouTube questions in the meantime. See if we got any questions in the chat there. Oh, hi, people in the chat. Yes, we do love Qbert. Everybody loves Qbert. How can you not love Qbert? He's awesome. A fantastic artist. Okay, cool. So, yeah, started up a new Zoom meeting. I love how they're like, let's make it 40 minutes. Just enough that they schedule an hour meeting with it. It's very funny. Okay. I'm just making sure that they got their invite link. All right, I've sent that link to. Yeah, I don't know if the old one worked or what, but I just sent them a new one in case the old one is not working. I should be back here in just a second. So I have Todd's phone number, so I just texted him. So he should be there in just a second. Yeah, if any of you YouTubers have questions, feel free to ask them, and I will answer. Boop, boop, boop. Yeah, it was really fun working with Mr. Bill today. We got a lot done. It was good times. Good times. Oh, we got a Todd. Okay, cool. I'll let Todd back in. Awesome. And then I'll go to here. Okay, cool. And then I just want to make it so I can see the YouTube chat a little bit. Little bitty bit. Doop doop boop boop scoop skadoop. Okay, cool. There we go. I can see the YouTube chat. And then we'll wait for Harold to get back. So did you use the first link or did the second one work?
You used whatever you just texted me. The
okay.
first one, I didn't. Well, I don't know. I used whatever you texted me.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Oh, hey, what up, Symphoria? He joined the producer's path today. Awesome. Welcome. But yeah, so he's yeah, and yes, that's a Shure SM57, and it helps it not pick up my speakers, which is handy. Yeah, it's good. Good shit. Good shit. Okay, so then Harold should be here probably pretty soon, I imagine.
My speakers, or like when you talk, does it fuck you over?
No, well, before there was all that echo cancellation and stuff, like I would stream, and I didn't want to necessarily always have to. I didn't want to always have to have headphones on, because when you wear headphones for like 12 hours, it's not great.
And then you feel like you have them on when you don't.
Yeah, or like I used to wear glasses and the headphones would like bend around your ears, and if you've been wearing headphones for 2 days, the ear cartilage resuming its normal shape, worst headache I've ever had, and I've had migraines. It was so bad.
Speaking of used to, I just got from a buddy of mine, which he probably already sent it to you, but I have Mantra Volume 5.
No way, I don't even have that. I don't even have that.
Yeah, I'll get it to you. I was wondering if you did.
That's awesome. Yeah, I totally don't have that. That's amazing.
I have it in MP3 format.
Amazing, dude. Old school.
Like in old school tape era. Oh, do you have this? I'm like, no. Dude, I put it on my SoundCloud. I couldn't even believe it. Like I was just like shocked, and listening to the scratching on it. I'm like, I don't even remember when I recorded it. Why? I just remember that. I remember it a bit. You know, like the mixing of it, but I was like, holy fuck, you know, it just blew my mind. I was like, why am I playing everything so fast, too? The BPMs were like...
Yeah, it was like, we were also habituated to super fast music back then.
Back then, for sure.
Yeah, everybody, like, I remember Breaks was slow at 135. Breaks was like, people were like, oh, it's so slow.
Yeah, 135, yeah, exactly. Slow 135.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
That's about the BPM of that whole set, and I was just like, Jesus.
Now I got to do like halftime of like 100 for it to feel slow. I'm making once these tracks are like halftime of 100, they hit
Yeah.
hard, and you
Yeah.
don't get a lot of halftime of 100. Okay, so all right, so back to back to defining our styles and stuff. So I'm gonna return now to you, Todd. But before we do, I want to kind of finish the thought that I was on when we reset, and that was
Absolutely.
basically the idea of creating a personal style manifesto. All right. So these dimensions that I've had you write down for your sliders and stuff, you can use those same dimensions to analyze whatever artist you want, and if you analyze, where different artists that you like fall on those imaginary faders, right? You can get kind of a good idea of kind of where you want to fall on those, on those different faders, and start you may think like, oh, okay, well, do I value artists that try very pointedly to sound like no other music, or do I value artists who are really good at doing the same thing that other people are trying to do, but they're just better?
Yeah.
Like there are different values. There's different genres have different values, and it's not like there's no right or wrong answer. It's up to you to define what the relevant dimensions are, as well as what you value along those dimensions, right? But when you have like a picture of that, and you have a picture of kind of like where your inspirations lie on that, where artists you don't like fall on such a scale, like are there any artists that you're just upset, you just want them to stop making music like today, like where do those artists fall in such a system of analysis,
Very
right?
interesting.
And that'll give you kind of an idea of where you want your project to land along these dimensions. And then the more creative part is thinking, okay, well, what does this look like operationally? Like how can I execute on this, right? And you know that this is where the concept of a style manifesto comes in. So, um, a style manifesto is where an artist sits down and basically generates like a blueprint for a musical revolution in their own creativity, where you're like, okay, I know what I want. This is how it's gonna happen, and it's like you're explaining the reasoning behind the decisions that you've made, right? Because a manifesto like necessarily has, it's like, hey, like this is why you need to think this way, right? Is what a manifesto is. It's a it's like it's persuading someone to change their thinking. It's persuading the reader to change their thinking, and it's then saying, okay, now that you've come to these same conclusions as me, how do we get where we're going? Right? That's like kind of the purpose of that, of one of those documents. It's twofold. It's explaining the reasoning behind the decisions, and then how to execute on them. Do you want to go outside? Is that what you want? Yeah. Out you go,
Like,
silly. She's been lying down too long. She's got a sleepy butt. But yeah, so think about it as writing a manifesto. Now, there's not necessarily an audience for this. Like, you don't need to persuade others of this. You're going to persuade others of this using your music alone. But getting your thoughts, like if you imagine that you're trying to convince someone who's unconvinced that this is the ultimate style, when you're kind of drawing this up, think like, okay, why is this so fucking dope? Like, exactly. Why? Because when you are thinking about it and when you're operating on the contents of your style manifesto, you need to be convinced that this is your style, that this is the style that like you yourself need to be sold on this as a course of action, right? So when artists make a style manifesto, usually the kind of broad strokes will be, it's somewhere between such and such genre goalposts, or equidistant between artist X and artist Y, You know, and usually that's as far as a lot of people get with their style manifestos or their artist bios, you know, like, oh, it's like Taylor Swift doing rails with Lady Gaga in a bathroom at a bus station, you know, like just, it's like fucking Family Guy writing. I'm like, get the fuck out of here with this. Stop, just stop. You know, put your manatees away. Like, but,
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, so, you know, it'll exist somewhere between that, but then like, why do we care? What makes it fresh? What makes this a modern thing and not simply playing catch up with your favorite artists, right? Um, Usually, the things that make it different are obstacles that are adopted kind of intentionally, right? And there's like I mean, there's this awesome book called The Obstacle is the Way that is like a pretty famous book. But basically, a lot of the time when an obstacle is presented, especially when an obstacle is presented to a creative person, rather than impeding their progress, it causes them to grow around it. And they rise to the challenge and do things that are, in many ways, better than what they would have done if there were no obstacle, right? So the famous Brian Eno card games with the creative provocations called Oblique Strategies is a set of such obstacles. And when you're working in like a big recording studio and it's the 80s and like you're paying like couple $100 an hour and like your guitarist and your drummer are fighting again and one of their girlfriends is fucking keeps interrupting and you're like, fuck, we need to get shit done. That's what the cards are created for. And then you like pull out a card and it's like, roll these dice, these are your 3 notes, go, you know, like, I mean, not always as limiting as that, but they're awesome and artists have been using them for like decades to great effect, right? And you could just go like, there's websites where you can just go to Oblique Strategies. I think obliquestrategies.com. I saw recently on the Ableton Reddit, someone made a Max for Live device that you can like call the obstacles up right inside of your Ableton.
Nice.
But these sorts of obstacles can be very useful in a creative process because it makes it into a game. And it makes you think in different ways than you would originally. And like, you're not just going to take the direct route from point A to point B because, you know, there's this obstacle there, right? So the components of your style, like when you're making a style manifesto, what makes that different from just being like, hey, fucking Udio, give me halfway between this artist and this artist, go, enter, you know? What makes it different than that and makes it, you know, in many ways more interesting is adopting these obstacles. And a lot of the individual style comes from these obstacles. And, you know, this is why many of the best artists often have really powerful personal obstacles that they're struggling against, you know, that can sometimes make for interesting art, right? But when you adopt things, like make a list of what everybody has in common. All of your heroes, what do they all have in common, right? And think about this not as like, this is a list of things that I need to emulate, but think about it in that you're looking for things to cross off your list, right? So the example that I always love to give about this is Edit from the Glitch Mob. When he was like creating a lot of that kind of music that made him famous, like Crying Over Prose and Certified Air Raid material and stuff that later went on to become the sound, probably part of the sound template for the Glitch Mob, right? He was like, okay, you know, rhythms must be entered by hand, a lot of them, you know, and like a lot of the instruments are played by hand and recorded and sampled rather than like edited with MIDI. And, you know, no hi-hats anywhere ever, no reverb anywhere ever, right? And it's not like he's like, I hate music with hi-hats. It's not like he's like, I hate quantize. It's not like he's like, every reverb sucks forever, you know? But he was like, in the interest of making an interesting and fresh style, these are things that I feel I'm like comfortable to omit, right? And, you know, like Camo and Crooked, for example, big part of what makes their drum and bass stuff interesting is the alternative approaches that they took to giving the vibe and feeling and rhythmic intensity of a sampled drum break without actually using a sampled drum break, right? Same thing with like Imanu and like Bunshin and a lot of those like really modern sounding drum and bass guys. There's always some sound that has like a kind of fluctuating dynamic, like the velocity of a drum break playing, but it is not actually drum break. Maybe it's gating on a chord sound, or maybe it is some kind of a randomized digital percussion, or maybe it's just white noise that's pulsating to the beat, like Super Mario, where short white noise is a kick, long white noise is a snare, you know? Like in those old General MIDI chip tunes, it's like that's a kick and snare, it's a boom bap beat. It's the same sound as every drum with no filtering. But that's how they did it, right? Was different lengths. Like a click is a hi-hat, a short burst is a kick, a long burst is a snare. And that was how those sounds were defined, right? And a lot of the more modern drum and bass stuff will use like, you know, noise gating in that sort of a style to create that feeling of drum breaks without using the drum breaks, right? So when people really push genres forward, they're questioning ever like more fundamental assumptions. You know, the more fundamental an assumption you can question, the more original your music's going to sound. The more fundamental an omission in your style manifesto, or a negative rule rather than an omission, I suppose. But the more fundamental a negative rule, the more challenging your music becomes. And really, it's all about finding a sweet spot between, you know, finding a sweet spot of what limitations yield the most creativity for you and what you won't get bored of. Because like, you know, one of the greatest examples of this that I've heard of is, there's this band, well, it's like basically mostly one producer, but Macwood Fleet, where the only sample source that they use in all of their music is the discography of Fleetwood Mac. So like every drum, everything has to be from a released, an illegal sample from a released Fleetwood Mac record. And I saw them play and it was pretty cool, but it made me think like, fuck, can you really spend a decade doing that? Like that's a lot of sampling Fleetwood Mac. Like that's a lot, you know? So you got to find that sweet spot of like, you know, cause like, let's say that Macwood Fleet were like, yeah, today we're going to sample Dire Straits. Their fans would be like, this is fucking treason. What are you doing? You know, they'd be so mad. Like they've really painted themselves into a corner with that. Right. So you want to find something that's like, you know, you want to find things that are like, you know, there's got to be enough meat on the bone for you to chew at it and come up with fresh shit endlessly. And the limitations also have to be things that, you know, you're willing to accept for an extended period. Right? All right. So let's talk about faders. Todd, what you got on your faders?
Well, I got to preface this by saying that as I was doing it, and, you know, as I was talking before about wanting to make lots of different things in that drum and bass realm, I realized that, you know, Project B, however long that may be, and like you said, this isn't permanent, would pretty much be the opposite of these faders, which is very interesting. And I find that exciting. So Nostalgia 8 is because a lot of it just brings back the memories of the, you know, the big, huge, ridiculous Toronto jungle parties. back in the 90s.
Yeah, those were
Right.
wild until speakers started falling on people,
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly.
and the
Right.
Rave Act didn't help.
No, the rig did not help at all. I look at like you said, the hectic meter, and then I put that kind of with like drums versus like as in like how many drums versus like very minimal drums, and I would have to put that at about an 8, like rollers, very drum oriented, like lots of beats. Vocals, I'm putting it around a 7 because they got some really, really, really close people in my life that are just so talented that I want to make tracks with.
Cool.
So I feel vocals, but that's kind of like a, that might not happen, right? Because that's always about getting people all in the same room. And right now I'm trying to focus on just writing more and getting back into that groove.
And you can always add vocals to a tune later too,
Very true.
Even if it already has vocals, make another version.
The laid back fader, 0.
No chill. Specifically no chill. Okay, well that's on your no list.
Party meter at 10.
Okay.
Yeah. Samples versus synths. I think there'll be a lot of samples. A lot of that has to do with the fact that I really do not know much at all about synths. Therefore, I must say I only did one quick one. That recording of just grabbing a synth and just going.
Oh yeah, that's the shit.
That's the shit for sure, and I'm very excited about that. But I feel like a lot of this, for me, like taking this course stuff too, is like I haven't written in so long and like some of the tracks are pretty damn good, and then I go back to Ableton and I'm like, how do I? And I find it very daunting. And it makes me nervous, and then I get discouraged.
Have you been using the official Ableton YouTube channel?
No.
Because the official Ableton YouTube channel is fucking amazing. When you need to look up specific shit, that's why it's on like slide 1 of the course.
That's right. Yeah.
It's on there, and like I've been watching like increasingly the Ableton because their SEO is not as good as like fucking. Dude looking shocked, and there's like a circled fucking volume fader, and it's like, never fucking do this or you're the worst producer ever. And you're like, I must know what that is. Ableton doesn't do that clickbait shit, like they're classy, and classy fucking loses on YouTube. So
I see that all the time. They're like, what you must not do when DJing. I'm like, especially when DJing, I'm like, screw that. I will do anything when DJing.
Yeah, exactly. Like they don't clickbait, and they keep it classy, so their shit's not top of the search. But if you actually go to the Ableton thing and you're like, wait a minute, what's the difference between modulation and automation? Like just type those into the search on the channel, because there's a search on the channel page, and then there's a top search. And any fucking technical thing, there's a really awesome, tight, edited, like 2-minute video that answers that technical question. It's sick.
Very, very. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Very
So
good.
for devices and stuff, that's like super, super useful.
So like, I guess I don't know if the organic, like I was looking at that sample, organic versus digital thing. I guess like I'm not sure if that kind of falls into the synth versus samples.
I mean, it can. It's just it depends. Like give me your access. Like I was just giving you example dimensions.
Oh yeah, I know, but I put organic as 8 because I find that like I do gravitate a lot towards like more organic sounds, but then at the same time, this is the thing, right? It's like there's some extended like heavy fucking bass lines that there's nothing organic about them at all.
It could also be within the context of like percussion, for example. Like I know a lot of music that is like all super organic percussion, and then the actual synth sounds are fucking nar binks. But it depends on the aesthetic. But just it's a dimension to use. Okay, and then keep going.
Because well, I don't know if that falls into the like laid back one, like heavy versus light. But at about an 8 as well, because like definitely upbeat, definitely like in your face.
Yeah, because 10 is a lot. Like you get 10 is a commitment.
Yeah, no, well that's what I mean. That's what party is at 10. Like
party is at 10. Okay, so that's definitely good.
I'm willing to commit to that. I mean, I know party can. I mean, that's a pretty is the word ambiguous? Like, I don't know if it's ambiguous, but like,
It can
it's
mean
not.
different things to different people, but I know what it means in your case, and I think putting it at a 10 is fair.
Yeah. And yeah, so I mean, and then like the two words I look at is feel good. Like it's gonna feel good. It's gonna be a party. It's gonna like, I mean, happy's relative because like, I mean, heavy and like, I mean, some of the
Yeah,
I
heavy
find this like
music makes me very happy
the
sometimes.
bass makes me happy as shit. So like, but it's not gonna, there won't be anything really like dark about it. But there may be some like dark sounds, but like it's
Yeah.
gonna be overall it's gonna make you feel good. Overall, it's gonna want to make you like, just you're doing the dishes, you're dancing around. There's this like, I don't know if you've seen this. It's this little short on YouTube, and it's like, how many times have you been there and you're like, man, I got so many things I got to do. What? And then you remember you've got drum and bass, and it's, he puts it on and he's doing all these different things, but you're having a good time. That's the moniker of
Okay.
that's gonna be the moniker is feel good, have a good time.
Okay,
And
cool. Well then that's I think that's already a pretty clear set of guidelines. And when you're working like from an emotion and you have a very specific emotion that you want to produce, it can be a little bit easier because then your reaction to it is like at a kind of pre-linguistic level, whereas like if there's a technical thing that you're putting first, it's kind of like you have to think about it a lot more, whereas like if it's an emotional thing you're putting first, you can kind of like watch for things that are triggering the feelings that you want and then put them in a fucking bucket, and then like have like like collecting chord progressions, collecting synth patches, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and
dude,
collecting
what
samples.
an absolute like digital pack rat, bro. Like you want to talk about like, so what do they call it? Like a hoarder. Like I was a sample hoarder, VST hoarder, and I've only used maybe five of them.
Yeah, well, curating
And I
is different than collecting.
for sure. And I gotta say, Sparks changed my life.
Yeah, well,
Life, because that was always the hardest thing. It was always the hardest thing. Is like, well, okay, where can I find something that's going to inspire me? Man, that changed my life. But anyways, I know it's not part of this.
front loading that really helps. And I mean, and it's also one of those things that you can do when you're just like browsing the internet or like listening
Yeah,
to the radio or like just walking around by yourself thinking, like it's
gotcha.
something that you don't necessarily need to be in the studio for. So
Yeah,
that really, yeah, that helps. And I mean, the more energy you can put into that, the better. Yeah, I think like, when it comes to drum and bass, especially, the kind of like style is so like drum and bass is like such fashion music, especially in terms of like what is considered like current or not. Like English people, for example, have some very strong opinions about drum and bass at a fashion level.
yeah,
But drum and bass, it's like the actual drums and the bass are kind of like, it's like my buddy Josh, he's like a painter and he's like been working on all these different like pieces with different like like different personal meanings and stuff for a really long time. And I was talking to him the other day and I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, I've just been painting flowers. And it's like all day. And he's like, it's not really the most intellectually stimulating thing, but if you can come up with an original way to paint a flower, that's when you've made it as a painter. And he's like,
hmm,
so I'm trying to find a new way to paint a flower.
right
And
on.
it's been killing me, but I think I'm getting there, And I was like, okay, that's like, so when it comes to drum and bass too, like especially snares, and like you'll hear like every few years in drum and bass there'll be some new way to do a snare that someone thinks up, and then everybody's got to figure it out and like do that shit. But exploring different ways to like actually make drums and make layering samples like the double transient trap snare where it's like shaglock shaglock and you hear the two fucking Or like the R. Kelly water drop snare, like those in all the R&B tunes for like a long time, stuff like that. Like with drum and bass, you want to think like, what are the fundamental most important things about drum and bass, and how can I do something that is like gonna be, it's like what can I do that's gonna be like make this in a different way. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the best way anyone's ever made a snare, or made a bass sound, but as long as it's like fresh, people get excited, and like I think like Boo has this one tune where there's these like rattling percussion sounds on top of the basses that sounds like they're happening at the same frequency as the oscillator, and it sounds kind of like there's something stuck in the speaker cabinet rattling around and shit. It's so fucking awesome.
That's some awesome tunes, that guy, for sure.
Yeah, and he, like that sound, it's like it's maybe not the most flattering sound in the world, but used right, you're just like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
So watch for stuff that like legit does not sound like any of the shit that you've heard before, because it's hard to train your ear to like want that, but then 5 years will pass and someone else will make some fucking hit record with a sound that you thought sucked when you first made it. And then you look back and you're like, fuck, I had it, and I just didn't know to value it at that point.
Yeah.
Right? So that is what happens. So, kind of keep an eye out for that. And like, experimenting with like fundamental things about rhythm too is always good. Like, different ways people get off the grid in drum and bass is particularly important. And like using things that are, not necessarily like a lot of those Steve Reich kind of phasing techniques where you have like two copies of an arpeggiator and one of the loops is ever so slightly shorter and they're like drifting, like in that Valley of the Shadows. It's like that arpeggiator's like that, and like that arpeggiator is like just such a fucking standout sound, and that's using some of these like minimalist like composition techniques where you're like phasing two copies of a thing. Oh shit. Okay. I think we're out of time again. So I'm gonna we got 10 minutes. So here, why don't you finish up and then we'll yeah, okay. Actually let's see if we can wrap it in 10. So Harold, do you wanna have the last 10?
Sure.
Okay. So all this stuff it's kind of cool that you guys are in similar places too, because like most of the answers that I'm giving could be equally applicable to both of you. But tell me about your faders and where they're at, and if you have any thoughts on any of the stuff that I said to Todd, because it applies equally to you.
I didn't really get a good list of faders because I wasn't really sure of like that. I did have a question about like, because I was been just like busy taking a ton of notes because like there is a lot of crossover like you mentioned. But if I wanted to like curate sounds from nature, like what's the best way to go about like recording stuff? Like I don't think the phone would be the best. But
no, the phone's great. I use phone to make field recordings all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I remember I was like coming out of this music festival, and this photographer dude gave me a lift in his RV, and it was like a really big music festival. I think it was Shambhala. He was showing me all, like going through all the festival photos on his computer, and like getting ready to hand his work in. And there's so many amazing ones. And I was like, wow, like these are fucking so great, what'd you get that one with? And he's like, my phone. And I was like, what'd you get that one with? He's like, my phone. I was like, what'd you get that with? He's like, my phone. And I was like, well, dude, you have like $1 million fucking dollars worth of equipment here. And he's like, yeah, but you know what the best camera is to use? The one you have. Like, and
Yeah.
he was like, when he went out to shoot a specific set and he had all his fancy shit, like maybe it would be better, but it's also better to catch the thing and not miss it, So I make field recordings with my phone all the time, and I use them in my music all the time. Like, so yeah, you definitely use your phone, but also check out freesound.org. Is an open source collection that you can search. Be like, I want elephants. Boom, elephants. You'd be like, I want a crowd of people in Japan. Boom, crowd of people in Japan. I want whatever. Like you can just type in whatever, and all kinds of famous artists use it, and the world is fucking sleeping on it because it's like a non-profit educational open source thing. So they're not like spending money on ads like Splice, right? So everyone's like, no, I should be going to Splice and paying money. And like you could go to Freesound and there's like fucking, you could go see what samples Flume downloaded. Go fucking get an Autechre sample pack that has like 5 downloads, you know, and it's all free. It's amazing. So go there and get field recordings from there. I get a lot of field recordings from there. And that's honestly like my main source for field recordings and for like sounds of nature and stuff. And there will be like some awesome person will have taken a really expensive mic to just the exact same thing you would record, and they recorded it and edited it and put it up for you, and it's free. So yeah, you know, you'll probably want to make your own field recordings and stuff too. Yeah, but
about recording it yourself and you know,
yeah, it's not nothing recording it yourself.
From recording it with your phone may be something you want. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and there is there is definitely like you know, a subjective value of that too, like knowing that it's like not just any queef you sampled, but you know.
Yeah.
but yeah, so you know, there is definitely, you know, there's definitely something to making our own field recordings, but yeah, so anyway, but yeah, freesound.org for sure, and yes, use your phone. Okay, so did you have any other thoughts or anything about anything that are style manifesto? Any thoughts on creating a style manifesto?
I think I just have like a lot of notes, and like I have to go back and like give it like a good couple hours to think about.
Okay. Yeah, the style manifesto stuff too, like it often, I mean, like all creativity, it's a reactive process, and frequently sitting down and being like, okay, time to get serious, and like staring at the fucking blank page is the exact worst thing for your brain to come up with that fucking output. And it may be like you've written it down and taken enough notes with your hand that it's like in the back of your mind, and then you'll be like doing the dishes or like have a weird dream or some shit, and then it'll like knock loose the answer, and you'll be like, oh, there it was, it's so obvious now, right? So you know, put enough energy in to like plant the seeds and stuff, but it's like coming up with an artist name, you know, it doesn't just happen on command, and a lot of the time it's like you have to plant those seeds and then wait, and then like, I don't know, you'll like be fucking walking in the woods and suddenly you'll go, oh, of course, right? So keep in mind that that's normally how it works. You know, it's a good idea to put the energy into thinking about it enough that it's in the unconscious mind, right? But once you've got it into your unconscious mind, that's really the goal. You don't necessarily need to have the final answer right away. You just need to like plant those things in the back of your mind, and they will, you know, probably come to you as you work through the rest of the course, right? But it's not like you have to have this stuff done before you start making music or anything. It's just that, you know, like with planting a tree, the best time to plant it is 10 years ago, and the second best time is right now, you know? So just plant the seeds, think about this stuff, think in terms of like, you know, what are the dimensions of style that I care about, you know, what are the goalposts that I'm trying to aim in between, and then what inclusions, omissions, and limitations would I include in my style manifesto. And none of this shit has to be your forever style. You know, artists will reinvent their style as time progresses, but just, you know, just start thinking in this way, and start thinking, because like, especially with AI kind of coming into the creative space, it's like, it's not the end of the creative world. There is still always going to be a need for human artists, and there are always going to be people who will prefer their art to have come from a human like them, because they want to see their private inner thoughts come out of you so that they can feel like they belong, right? So really, you know, AI is solving a lot of the technical challenges and the nuts and bolts of doing creative work, but real art has always been and will always be about style and what that style says without words and how people react to that style at an unconscious level, you know? So, style has always been the name of the game. So when you start thinking about it in terms of this, like, don't think like when you're learning to produce, it's easy to be like, what technique is this artist serving me? But you should be asking, what style is this artist serving me? What emotion is this artist serving me? What identity is this artist serving me? What escape is this artist serving me? You know, what if this music was a drug, who would take it and why? You know? So think about it like in those terms, and the answer will come. Okay? But yeah, don't be like, if it doesn't come out of my pen in the next 2 hours, I suck. Like, don't think about it that way, because that's not how it works. Okay?
Yeah.
Cool. Any final questions for our last minute here?
I don't have a question, bro, but I do want to say I remember sitting in your new place in Toronto when you moved to Toronto.
Oh, yeah.
Just started teaching Ableton, like just started. And I got to tell you, bro, I am beyond proud of you.
Shucks.
Like, dude, I'm like so stoked on everything you've been doing. And I'm so glad that I'm finally a part and getting to learn from you, because I'm just so proud of you, bro.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm proud to have you in the dojo, Todd. It's been a long time coming, man. It's great to be connecting. And Harold, it's great to hang with you as well. And I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. All right. Lots of love. See you in the producer's path. Peace.
Yeah, man.
Easy. Well, that was a wholesome, good time. All right. Well, lots of love, everybody. I'm gonna go get back to music making, but yeah, Producer's Path is popping off. Don't miss your chance. Go to theproducerspath.com, and then if you want to get down on the Dojo Discord, I'm gonna start adding the link to the YouTube descriptions, but it's in the YouTube description below. So if you're not in the Discord yet, click it and get in there. All right. Peace.